Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure to speak at TiEcon, and TiE's continued focus on education is excellent because education is headed for some really exciting times. Now, as Pradeep said, when I mentioned the title, that Gen X may have failed their kids and Gen Y wake up, the common and shocking reaction was, I don't think I failed my kids. But before I get into that reaction and talk a little bit more about it, I would like to first recognize that Generation X is indeed a phenomenal generation which has changed the way we communicate and interact with each other. Also, we have had unprecedented changes in technology on our watch, and we have founded companies like Google and Tesla, and even in education, companies such as Coursera, 2U, even Chegg, and up-and-coming companies such as Tinker, Dreambox, and BrainPop. So quite a few different areas where we've done really well. Now, we're walking around with a world of information in our back pocket and disrupting industries. So you must be wondering, with this huge progress, why does this guy have the audacity to say that we may have failed our kids when it comes to education? But if you're anywhere from 35 to 55 years old, you're part of Generation X, you've done a lot of great things, so well done. Now, despite our huge gains, as a generation, we have also increased the gap between the have and the have-nots. We've hurt the climate. And also, our kids are not better off at school than we were, and they're certainly not better prepared for the job market. So, despite all these gains, next generation should always be better off than the previous one. And I don't think we can make a convincing argument that is the case. Now, education is the most important thing that we should pass on to the next generation. And to really understand that comment, you just have to look a little bit into the horizon. Michael Milken of the Milken Foundation a couple of years ago got together a few Nobel laureates and asked them the question, what are the top 10 challenges faced by humanity over the next 50 years, and what are their solutions? Now, these are obviously very smart people, and they came up with 10, which were disease, democracy, environment, education, energy, food, poverty, population, terrorism and war, and water. They also concluded that 6 out of these 10 problems are going to be solved by education, and the remaining 4 by energy. So there are only 2 solutions for the next 50 years that we have to solve: education and energy. But it's also very interesting to note, in order to solve those energy problems, you have to be highly educated. So in my opinion, 10 out of 10, you have to be really well educated to solve the problems that we will face as humanity. So dropping the ball on education is definitely a massive error, and I'll further back that up with more information for you. So let's first start with who failed and how, and let's go back to the reaction, I don't think I failed my kids. This is not about an individual family or an individual parent. This is not about an individual teacher or someone in a union or someone in a school administration or in the government. Collectively, we have as a group taken steps and made decisions which led our kids down when it comes to education. Now, the pace of innovation delights all of us, and how much progress we have made, I mean, hard to fathom. 8 years ago, there was no smartphone. But what surprises many of us is how little of this technology has made it to the classroom, where it matters the most. So we have a bottleneck that's hampering this progress. Yet it's very interesting that this same bottleneck is what the #1 area where you will see a bright future for entrepreneurs and investors who are working in education technology. So our biggest failing as a generation is that we let education get so politicized that it's no longer about the kids, but it's more about making points, scoring points, maintaining an agenda, and celebrating hollow victories. It's a massive error because it will take decades to fix this and correct this, yet in the process, millions of kids are going to continue to go through our school system. Now, there are 4 impacts of this, of letting education get so politicized. And I don't think I really have to go into detail. Anyone who's in education, any parent, you're all very clear about what's happening in education and why it's slowing down. But the 4 main reasons or the impact of this, number 1 is we let our schools get rusty. And when I mean we let our schools get rusty, I mean that the lack of technology and the frozen will that is due to lack of leadership is making it clearly difficult to bring in technology into the classroom. Now, just 6 months ago, LA Unified had an epic failure in trying to put technology in the classroom. And that is just in this day and age. So not getting technology in the classroom, massive error. But the interesting thing is Generation X grew up in the computer age. We grew up with computers, yet 30 years after the computers became a household item, we're still trying to figure out how to get technology in the classroom. We continue to argue over basic facts about what to do. The second problem that's made schools rusty is Generation X really took on to teaching to the test as a way to teach. And that is going to be a big error for us because if kids are learning how to memorize, the ability to innovate and become entrepreneurs goes down significantly. So how do you, as a generation who grew up with technology, who grew up with computers, who grew up with all these systems, who changed the way we communicate, not put technology in the classroom knowing that's where it matters the most? So that is definitely a big error. Secondly, we helplessly watched our kids and their rankings decline globally. Now, this is also due to politics, which led to indecisiveness. And because of this, our decision-making abilities have come to a crawl at best. So we suffer from paralyzed will. If you really follow the discussions that are happening in the classroom, they are more about bring your own device or one-to-one. They're still trying to sort out what is the plumbing that we need to put in, and not as much discussion is taking place about what is it that we need to teach our kids. And in the meantime, foreign students are outpacing American students. We are 38th in math, 26th in science, and 24th in literacy. So it's collectively, the decisions we are making are beginning to show an impact on our kids already, and it only continues to get worse. Now, I personally don't put a lot of weight in global comparisons because many of these countries are already teaching to the test. So fundamentally, I don't think it's the best way to review things, but that's the only thing we have today. And another interesting point is that is the method Generation X chose more than a decade ago that they wanted to follow, and the results have been dismal as a choice that they made on teaching to the test. Another important item is that parents put faith solely in the school and somewhat disengaged on or didn't keep update of the progress of their kids. And again, this is not an individual family. When you look at a country or a generation, you look at across the broader spectrum. And the attitude tends to be, in many cases, that, well, my tax dollars are supposed to be working, so if my kids have to be educated, where are my tax dollars? Why aren't they teaching everything in school? And then they begin to disengage. Now, it's true that in many cases, parents don't know the material, or it's very hard for them to teach homework themselves, or it's very difficult for them to, they may have the child may be a first-generation student, right? So there are many of these challenges. Yet it's very interesting that overseas, parents spend 7.5 times more as a percentage of salary on their children's education than US parents. And they're just busy opening doors for their kids. It's not about they're doing the homework with them, they're helping their kids along, they're opening the doors for them. So in the US, if you're in education technology, many of you know that parents begin to balk at even spending a little bit money outside the classroom on education content. And that's something which is beginning to go away, but as a generation, that has been the norm, but in the future, it's going away. Now, the fourth one is even more interesting. Generation X was handed a hot potato when it comes to gender gap in education. And we solved the gender gap problem by creating another one. When you ask a common person about gender gap in education, in most cases they'll tell you that, well, it means that girls are being left out. And that's really the gender gap problem in education. While it is absolutely true in some subjects, girls are still not at par. But the real interesting thing is that Generation X swung the pendulum so hard the other way that boys have started to become an endangered species in learning. If you look at the data, 6 out of 10 students who did not reach the basic level of proficiency in the core subjects were boys. And on the other side, 60% of applicants in going to colleges over the next 3 years are going to be women. So clearly a shift is occurring, and we as a generation should not have swung it so hard, but should have been more careful about adopting the strategies to allow for both. So now it's going to take a few years to try to bring it back to the center. So when you look at all these things, these are core things in education. I mean, we can get into things such as teacher salaries and other areas to motivate teachers. We have a teacher crisis in the US and actually all over the world. But when you combine all of these things, we as a generation certainly dropped the ball when it comes to education and where it matters the most. Now, Generation Y, which is going to turn anywhere from 14 years or 15 years to 34 years this year, most of their kids still have to go to elementary. So there is plenty of time for them to take collective, corrective, serious steps to solve the problem. Now, in the movie, Waiting for Superman, and for those of you who haven't seen the movie, this was a movie about how American public schools have become dropout factories and how teachers and teacher unions and the school administrator, they're not able to work together to solve the problems for the kids. But the movie is about that Superman is not coming, we got to solve the problems in the schools ourselves. But if you watch the movie or think about it, the Superman in the movie were actually the parents who were trying to change their kids' future and work around edges of the system. There is no need to wait for Superman. You, mom and dad, are already here. Parents are the Superman who really need to step up for their kids. The sooner we realize that parents, as Pradeep said, as a parent, he made sure his kids did great, but collectively, as parents, the sooner we realize that parents really have to step up, even if in your school district the things are not taking place, instead of saying, where are my tax dollars, why are those things not working, parents need to step up, because getting your kids to school on time is not good enough. You have to do a lot more for the kids. There is something to be said about parent power. And I think Generation Y's core movement in education should be about parent power, taking control of things while good education reforms and systems continue to be put in. Now, Generation Y can turn things around. As I said, there's plenty of time, and it's not that difficult to do. First and foremost, don't wait for the government. Be the Superman, as I just said. The reality is any good government program is going to take a decade to take hold, and even then, there's a 50-50% chance that the program may not work or sustain itself. So that's going to be too late for any kid that's in elementary school today, and unless parents are stepping in, that won't help. Secondly, the tools are already here. Many tools are already here to help you develop these practical skills that your children need. They're in your back pocket. If you search a little bit harder, you don't have to be the teacher for these kids, but these tools allow you to teach. You just have to open the door for your kids. Third, augment their education. Get them into topics other than math and English. Math and English in the US have a big focus from in the schools due to standardized testing. However, if you get your kids into science, arts, and computer science, what you will do is you will create a level of critical reasoning and thinking and creativity that may not exist in math or in English. But doing that, augmenting that outside the classroom is a significant thing to do. Now, do this because you want to and your kids need it, mainly because kids, every parent wants the best for their kids, and that is a key thing to do. So how does this approach of this shifting behavior from Generation Y impact education entrepreneurs? And how does it impact the future of education technology? So there are a few different things which are coming together and will continue to come together to form very interesting and important trends. First, the potential for improvement in online education is huge because the bar today is so low. A lot of thought and effort goes into, is it online? Can I access it from anywhere? Those are the most important questions being asked today, but very little thought has gone in to what it should be. You have many programs which have come online and put videos online, but eventually have petered off, mainly because a lot of thought was not given to the new age of teaching and instruction for the kids. So where there's huge progress will be due to the plumbing is already in place, that you can now get everything online pretty easily. It can be multi-platform. All the plumbing is already in place. More focus needs to go and is going to go on what it should be. So to build better products which are coherent versus trying to build a Frankenstein by borrowing from different places, that is certainly not, not the product you want to be building. Now, your early adopters are going to be savvy parents who are not going to be waiting for the government reforms to kick in. They'll be demanding more information and more products, and there will be a much bigger demand for these education ed tech products than what you see even today. The largest spenders in many of these app stores are actually elementary-aged parents who are trying to figure out, how do I augment my child's education today? Now, another really important trend that's going to happen within the next 3 years is the broad and comprehensive acceptance of technology by teachers. Acceptance that technology is not a replacement of them, but an enabler for them. That's going to be a very important change of heart, which will allow an explosion of products into the market. Now, teachers won't be replaced. I mean, let's just understand that, because kids need to go to a social environment where they need to learn about other important skills in life, like communication and collaboration, in addition to problem solving and critical thinking. But these are developed in an environment, in a classroom, with a teacher that helps you along. Now, one interesting thing about teachers is, according to UNESCO, there is going to be a shortage of 4 million teachers by the year 2030. Even in a place like Las Vegas, which I mentioned Las Vegas because they're the #1 in terms of trying to find teachers, today they have a need for 3,000 teachers to come and teach, but they have another problem in Las Vegas. The average salary of a teacher is $34,500 for a new teacher to start in Las Vegas, which is lower than the people dealing cards and getting drinks from you in the casino. So if these are the people who need to inspire our kids and teach our kids, there's a fundamental problem in budgets and salaries that we're looking at to attract teachers to come in. 1 out of 5 teachers end up leaving the education system within 5 years. So there's a consistent churn and a demand for teachers. So they are not going to be replaced, but they will find these tools will augment them in the classroom to propel kids to the next level. So as I was saying, with this acceptance, there will be a huge explosion of products. And the teachers will actually be a very interesting conduit for selling to parents, because the teachers will begin to recommend products to parents for them to use at home. The systems will allow you to use the product in the classroom and at home. And with that explosion, many parents will just accept, oh, if the teacher is saying this is a good product, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to have my kids use it. So it actually becomes a channel for getting to consumer parents. And when I say consumer parents, I mean not selling to the school, but eventually the pair being the parent. Now, another trend, which I think is for the bravehearted, which will happen in the next 5 years, our generation and the next generation is not going to be able to produce the number of teachers we need to fulfill the needs and demands of future students. It's just physically not possible. We have a problem today, and as I said, UNESCO is saying it's only getting worse. So a new or a intelligent system needs to be developed which helps a kid really move along in education, but something that's just not serving up information to you. I think of it as a conversant artificial intelligence system, something that has a personality, something that motivates you and encourages you to go along in your learning, versus a typical transactional AI system which does, a typical transactional system which is only good at giving you yes or no answers. So with this conversant artificial intelligence system, we'll be able to fulfill the lack of teachers. The lack of teachers is going to force us to build this system. I guess there's another way to look at it. Because just serving information to the kid is not going to work. The kid has to be motivated to go along. The system has to be supportive. And all these things have to work together so a child on their own can move forward.
3 minutes to go. Any got questions?
Okay. All right. Thank you. So online education will see a big uptick because of all these trends and things coming together. And I wouldn't be too surprised if in the not too distant future, 9th graders are finishing high school courses or high school education by the time they hit 9th grade, provided parents continue to open doors for them and exhibit parent power. So with that, thank you so much. Let me address some of the questions that we have. So first question is, what can we do to encourage kids to read more books? So the number one thing, this comes back to parent power. You will find that if you read books with your kids at the earlier ages, they will read a lot more books because they typically follow what their parents do. So it is actually becoming a problem. I mean, we at our company, we do a lot of play testing with kids, boys and girls, and we find that boys don't like to read as much. They bounce around a lot more. But the key is that you have to get them to like reading at an early age. That's why elementary, the formative years of their life is so important for you to do that. So as they've grown older, it becomes more challenging for you to get them to read. So now, if there's a kid in 5th grade, we have to find them a game in addition which has some reading and some activity for them to do so they can continue to learn as they go forward. Another question is, how do you stand out amongst all the noise that there is in online education? It's a complicated yet a simple answer. So first and foremost, as I was saying, that everyone is trying to put stuff online, and there's no real differentiation in your product versus the next. So you really have to be patient, but have to focus on building a much better product which is really, really different, right? So never be satisfied with anything you're building, because the moment you become satisfied, you will lose your edge. But you have to focus on why is my product so much better than anything else out there, and that's where many entrepreneurs give it a little bit thought, then they begin to focus on the plumbing, how to get it out there. but they don't spend enough time on it. If your product is good, I promise you, people will talk about it, parents will talk about it, students will talk about it at all age, and you will see a big uptick in your product. Just focus on the product, and I think other things will definitely begin to line up for you. Okay, I think I'm out of time. So thank you so much.